Hello. Hello, police. Yeah, what's the problem, sir? We just drove down our farm track. Yeah. Go and feed our pheasants. We come across a Range Rover with 3 people in it. Yeah. It appears that they're dead. I don't know what's happening. Blood in the motor all over them.
And welcome back to a new video on the Essex Boys case. As always, if you are enjoying the content, please do give the video a thumbs up. And if you're interested in the Essex Boys case, or simply true crime in general, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. Over in the neighbouring county of Suffolk, Michael Steele and Jackie Street were driving along the A12 towards the Ipswich roundabout in their Toyota RAV4, having left Great Bentley a little earlier in the day. Just up ahead, Peter Corey was driving Jack's blue transit van. The trio were on their way to G&T Commercials to see Jack. The call from Nicholls had come only a few minutes earlier, but Steele was still taken by surprise when a convoy of unmarked cars suddenly appeared by his side and a man in a uniform gestured at him to pull over. Steele put his foot down. 2 of the pursuit cars also accelerated, weaving around the traffic to take up positions just ahead and just to the side of the Toyota. Steele tried to drive his way out of trouble, but was outclassed. Then the unmarked escort deliberately drove across his path, crashing into him and forcing him to a halt. A man leaped out and ran towards the driver's window. "I am DC Chappell from Essex Police, and I am arresting you both for suspicion of being concerned in the importation of controlled drugs." Steele stepped out and glanced at the front of his car. "Has he fucking damaged my bumper?" he said. One of the younger, keener officers stepped forward and put his hand on Steele's shoulder to guide him towards the car that would take him to the station. Steele's ice blue eyes burned a hole right through the youngster's head. "Take your fucking hands off me, boy," Steele said. Never one to miss an opportunity, Steele would later lodge an official complaint about his arrest. He claimed the officers responsible had driven in a malicious manner, which could have resulted in serious injury or even the death of him and his partner of 25 years. Steele also complained that when Jackie Street was finally released, she was horrified to discover their home had been abused and damaged by the police. Money loaned to the couple from relatives was allegedly taken, and Street's vehicle was seized. "She has been maliciously penalised by overzealous officers," wrote Steele. "She is now unable to perform normal daytime duties. She has no one to turn to." A few feet further down the road, the door of Jack's transit van was opened by DC Sanders, who slapped his palm down on the quivering shoulder of Peter Corey. "You're nicked," he said triumphantly. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to supply controlled drugs." Corey stepped down to be cautioned and handcuffed and glanced over at Michael Steele and Jackie Street, both surrounded by equal numbers of police officers. He swallowed hard and then spoke. "I don't know what you mean, mate." Jack Womes was at G&T Commercials cleaning an engine when Bill Davidson, other customs officers and a few members of the police armed response unit approached him. "OK, Jack," said Davidson, "put down the power washer." Jack's brow became a mass of furrows. "Actually, it's a pressure washer." Then Jack slowly looked around at the hordes of officers and gunmen surrounding him. "Fucking hell, Bill, this is a bit heavy, ain't it?" As he was driven away in handcuffs, Darren Nicholls kept an eye out for a familiar face. Darren Nicholls states, "They took me down to Chelmsford police station. All the way there, and when we arrived, I kept looking out for Jim. I kept expecting him to pop up at any moment and say, 'No, this one's okay, he's on our side.' I was sure this was all down to him, that he'd finally swooped, and the reason I'd been arrested was to stop Mick and Jack from suspecting I'd grassed them up." They let Colin go home after a couple of hours. They realised he had nothing to do with anything illegal, but he wasn't allowed to make any phone calls or see anyone for ages. They interviewed me for the first time just before 11:30 p.m. They were asking me loads of questions about the cannabis they'd found in my van and where it come from. I was just going, no comment to the whole lot, no matter what they said. I'd only been selling the drugs because Jim had told me to keep him with Mick. In my mind, at least, I hadn't really done anything wrong. I was sure it was all going to be fine, but then they played their trump card. Essex Police record of tape recorded interview, Chelmsford Police Station, 13th of the 5th, 96, 23:26 hours. Detective Constable Winston. We believe that you were in convoy today and you were playing an active part in the transportation of 10 kilos of cannabis resin, and you are being asked to make some form of comment about that. Do you wish to say anything about that? No comment. Again, I draw your attention to the fact that if you refuse to answer this question, it may affect any other answers you give at your trial. Do you understand that? No comment. Right. And lastly, there's a record is being made, as I've said, of this tape, and should you later be prosecuted, this will be brought up at your trial. Do you understand that? No comment. Okay, well, if that is it, you've got the notice. I don't intend to say any more about the possession with intent to supply at the moment. The time by my watch is now 23:35 hours, and you're going to be arrested for being involved in the murder of Pat Tate, Craig Rolfe and Tony Tucker. Do you wish to make any comment to the fact you've now been arrested for that murder? No comment. Darren Nicholls states, "They were doing it to gauge a reaction, and I didn't give one. But as soon as they switched the tape off, I went mad. What do you think you're doing arresting me for that? I said. This was my worst nightmare coming true. And where was Jim?" The following day, the evidence against him was starting to mount up. Nicholls was beginning to realise how hopeless his situation was. In addition to all the police and custom surveillance records, which now included still pictures and video footage, the police also had access to the phone records of both Nicholls and Steele. Again, Nicholls took the no-comment road, but it was obvious he was being backed into a corner. In fact, with neither Steele or Wholmes being caught in possession of drugs, there was more evidence against him than anyone else. And then, once again, just when things were looking at their bleakest, they got even worse. Essex Police record of tape-recorded interview, Chelmsford Police Station, 14th of the 5th, 96, 15:51 hours. Just to put it in a nutshell here, Darren, what we're actually saying is that there's been a large importation of cannabis resin to this country. You have now been shown to have been privy immediately before this importation came about by your association with Steele and the others. You have then, subsequently in the very early hours of the next morning, been involved directly in the importation of these drugs. Your vehicle has subsequently been forensically examined and there is salt water and a large amount of sand consistent with this having been used on the beach, consistent with the importation taking place. You've been shown by surveillance to have been involved in the collection of a consignment of 10 kilos of cannabis resin. As far as I'm concerned, you're a large player in all the goings-on that have happened. You were so concerned at the time that you were stopped that your first thought was to try and tell Mr. Steele that it had all come on top as far as you were concerned. I feel in the light of that summary you should reconsider your situation. I want you to understand the enormity of what we are saying to you. Do you understand that? No comment. Fine. Now, I have a copy of your custody record from last night. This entry is timed at 21:16 hours. It says, quote, "Whilst carrying out the review, Mr. Nicholls asked if he could speak to a nominated police officer known to him. I passed this to Superintendent Story, who declined this, and Nicholls was informed of the above. Would you like to make any comment about that?" No comment. Would you like to tell me who the police officer was that you wished to have some dialogue with at the time? No comment. Okay. I can tell you that at the moment, 2 police officers from Essex have been arrested and are currently in custody. Oh, fuck, I don't fucking believe it. The officers have been charged with a number of offences, including some linked to the possession of controlled drugs. We have evidence that you have had numerous dealings with one of the officers. Is there any comment you wish to make now? No. No fucking comment. As soon as the interview was over, Nicholls asked to see the most senior officer available. What happened next was recorded by DC Winston in his pocketbook. Quote, "I was in the company with Detective Superintendent Barrington when we spoke to Darren Nicholls in an interview room. Nicholls had signed the custody record to agree to be seen without a solicitor. This meeting had been requested by Mr. Nicholls, who was introduced to Mr. Barrington. Nicholls asked Mr. Barrington if he named the arrested officer, would he confirm it? Mr. Barrington agreed, and Mr. Nicholls said, 'Is it DC Jim?' Mr. Barrington confirmed this, and then he, Nicholls, went on to say that this was how he had gotten into trouble and wanted to say he'd been set up. Mr. Barrington explained that regardless of what information Mr. Nicholls gave, that he would be responsible and have to accept any sentence passed on him by the legal system. Mr. Nicholls accepted this and asked about what protection would be given to him and his family. Mr. Barrington said that Mr. Nicholls must be totally honest in all details given so that an accurate judgment could be made regarding the level of protection offered. Mr. Nicholls asked about protection in prison and was told about the system of protection that was available for registered informants. Mr. Nicholls said he would be giving information regarding illegal activities of policemen and said he did not say anything to DC Winston because he did not know if he could trust him. Mr. Barrington said that Mr. Nicholls could trust him fully and that he should tell him the whole truth of what his involvement was. Mr. Nicholls stated that he was a registered informant of DC Jim, and Mr. Barrington acknowledged this by stating that he knew all about that and that he had sanctioned a payment to him, and that DC Winston had no involvement with DC Jim at all. Mr. Nicholls said that for the last 6 months he felt he was being used and that drugs jobs were not his main concern and that other more serious things would be disclosed. Darren Nicholls states, "I knew I didn't have a choice. I tried to put myself in Jack and Mick's shoes to wonder what was going through their minds, and pretty soon I realised I was totally screwed. 2 days earlier Jack had threatened to kill me, the next day he gets arrested. In Mick's case I come round to collect some drugs and an hour later he gets arrested. It was a good bet that by now they would also have been told about a couple of policemen who had been nicked and that I'd been talking to one of them. It wouldn't take them long to put 2 and 2 together, and even if they didn't work out I was giving information about the smuggling side of things, I was still the weak link in the murder case. And now the cops were talking about remanding me in custody in Chelmsford Prison. That's exactly where they were going to put Jack and Mick and the others. I wouldn't last 5 minutes. It was time to start talking." You've been listening to Blogs 19, written by Tony Thompson. This book is available to purchase online at Amazon and other online book retailers. Many thanks for joining me for this video. Very shortly you'll be able to see some other videos from the channel, including the Essex Boys playlist, which has all of the videos concerning this case in one convenient folder. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. I look forward to seeing you all again in the next video. Take care. Cheers.